morning, everyone. My name is John Spellmeyer, and welcome to this edition of Duncan Aviation Straight Talk. We're joined by our friends at Universal Avionics to talk about WAAS LPV, an FMS upgrade that pays for itself. I'm joined today by our friend from Universal Avionics, Eric Carlson. Eric is from the air capital, lovely Wichita, Kansas. He's been with Universal Avionics for, I believe, 16 years. He's a busy guy. I know he's doing some flight testing last week here in Wichita with the FAA and Bombardier, and I do know the winds were gusting to almost 70 miles an hour, so I bet that was quite a ride last week. I also have my compatriot who covers the eastern U.S., Michael Kuzatz. He's our Eastern United States Regional Avionics Sales Manager. Michael's one of these guys that knows how to install the equipment and then can turn around and knows how to fly with the equipment. He's quite an accomplished aviator, instructor pilot extraordinaire, and I can tell you his last student just passed his check ride and is a paraplegic. That's outstanding, Michael.
Yep, thank you, John. Yep, thank you.
So a couple of housekeeping things to talk about. On the right side of your screen, you're going to see a little toolbar that allows you to chat, to throw out questions to us. We're going to ask a couple of polling questions to kind of make this a little interactive, and at the end of the day, we're going to have a raffle for attendees on here. We're going to give away a couple of tumblers. So let's kick things off. We're going to talk about the FMS quite a bit today, and we're going to start out by talking about the FMS in the days before WAAS LPV or SBAS, space-based augmentation, what we call WAAS. Your FMS is essentially a whiz wheel. It's a dead reckoning tool. It figures out where it is based on where you tell it started. It knows where it's going based on the flight plan you put into it, and then it computes a heading in time to each waypoint. Hence, we call it a two navigator. Now, the original baseline FMS before the days of WAAS has the ability to use multiple types of sensors on the airplane to calculate its position. It can take VOR, DME. It can dead reckon, it can take a GPS position, and it evaluates each one of these sensors with something called a Kalman filter, which is kind of a statistical equation that weights each one of these sensor inputs and gives it a merit. How accurate do I think this is? And then it blends all that information, and voila, we have an FMS position that's based on all the sensors that are in the airplane, blended together. It's called blending. So, our first polling question here I want to throw out to you. The question is, which of the following has the greatest impact to your operations today? Is it you're concerned about building blocks to future mandates and capabilities? Are you concerned with shorter flight times and more efficient approaches with LPV and something called RMP, required navigation performance? Are you trying to leverage the equipment in your airplane? Etc. Are you concerned about the cost of repair, the FMS memory, parts obsolescence, or the inability to meet future mandates? So why don't you guys give me your inputs, and then we'll see what we got here. I'll just give you a couple of seconds. And
this is always my favorite part. It's like watching a horse race.
It is. So at the end of the day here, we got 40% of everybody who's concerned about CPDLC and data link communications. The FMS memory and data-based limitations is an issue with folks, and so is parts obsolescence and the inability to meet current and future mandates. But pretty much across the board, with the exception of frequency and cost of repair, and this stuff is usually very reliable. So that's our first polling question. Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about what's called SBAS.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. My name is Michael Kuzatz. We'll talk real briefly about SBAS. GPS has been around for quite a while. And so for the most part, most of us know what it is. And, back in the 90s, it was super cool that we had GPS and we could figure out how fast we are and are going or where we are. And if you remember back in those days, the technology was good, but it wasn't pinpoint accuracy. So SBAS has really given us this extra technology to give us pinpoint accuracy. Now, SBAS is kind of it's a general term. Here in the United States, it's called WAAS. In other countries, it's called something else, but SBAS technology is all the same. And really what it is it's making the GPS a little more reliable. And so what happens is your normal GPS satellites send down a signal, but they've got to pass through the atmosphere, and there's solar flares, and there's all these other things that are affecting that signal. So it's not always perfect. And there's ground stations located around the United States that receive the same GPS signal that you do, but these ground signals or ground stations receive the signal and go, hey, I know how to fix that to make it perfect. And so it sends a correction signal back up to a geosynchronous satellite that's just hovering over the equator within sight of the United States. And that correction signal then gets launched back down to the US. So your GPS will receive the normal GPS signal, and this correction signal. And with that correction signal, then you get that super pinpoint accuracy. And so that's how it works. I have no idea how humans figured out how to do that. They were obviously a lot smarter than me. But again, SBAS is utilizing that technology. In the US, we call it WAAS. Over in Europe, EGNOS, and so on and so forth. So there's different names to it, but again, it's all SBAS utilizing the same technology. And not all GPSs can receive all those different correction signals, and that's where Universal is a little step above everyone else. And I'll hand it over to Eric, as he's pretty much the expert on that.
Thanks, Michael. So the Universal FMS is compatible with EGNOS and WAAS and MSAS and GAGA and all the different regions of SBAS coverage currently. We do also have different models to meet your requirements. The UNS 1EW and 1ESPW are self-contained units, which means they have the GPS sensor, the navigation computer, and this display all in one unit. The ESPW is pretty popular in citations as well as Sikorsky aircraft. Then we have the UNS 1FW as well as the UNS 1LW. They're both two-piece units. So the navigation computer and GPS sensor are boxed together and typically mounted somewhere remote to the CDU, which is mounted in the cockpit. The SBAS FMS, of course, is available now. It has been certified in more than 50 aircraft platforms, and there are many available STCs that we'll show later on in the slideshow.
Thanks, Eric. So as you heard Michael discuss, the augmentation of GPS, WAAS as we call it, improves GPS accuracy, down to the foot, both horizontally and vertically, which is huge. Integrity, and by that I mean there are fault detection and exclusion algorithms in the FMS now that if it smells something funky going on with the GPS, it will exclude satellites and notify the aircrew. And availability. This augmentation also improves the availability of GPS, where it's available literally 99.99% of the time. The odds of you losing WAAS GPS are very, very remote. And with that reliability, accuracy, and integrity, the FAA has now said that a WAAS GPS can be a primary source of navigation in the aircraft. And that's different than back in the day where we just had an unaugmented GPS signal coming in. You had to have other equipment on the airplane to verify, to confirm the aircraft's position, i.e. VORDME, LORAN, or whatever gadget you got in the airplane. So now if you have a WAAS GPS, you don't have to have that other equipment on the airplane. The other part of this is that once everybody is using the WAAS GPS signal, which is required for ADS-B, as you know, everybody's position in the FMS is going to be the same. We're going to all be using the same source of position data, the WAAS GPS. There's no blending that goes on in the FMS when it receives the WAAS GPS signal. That stops. You can see where if different airplanes were blending in their FMS, you could theoretically be at the same position on the Earth, but your FMS is going to think you're someplace different. That doesn't happen when the aircraft's equipped with a WAAS GPS. It eliminates the need for you to do that pesky thing called a rain prediction tool as required by AC 90-100. It supports current and future expected ADS-B requirements. It can reduce the nav equipment that's on the airplane. The WAAS database is much more inclusive, much more accurate, and it gives you a greater selection of runways. The capability gives you more direct flight paths via ATC, RMP1, which is required navigation performance, 1 mile arrivals and departures, RF flags, and again, the full worldwide FMS database. One of the huge benefits of WAAS LPV and the FMS is a precision GPS approach called Localizer Precision with Vertical Guidance, LPV. This is a GPS, a precision approach that is essentially an ILS look-alike. It looks and flies like an ILS to the aircrew. Same kind of angular deviation to the runway and course and glide slope information. It flies just like an ILS, except that it's much more available across the country now than ILSs. It also uses the GPS altitude to build a glide path. You do not have to rely on barometric altimetry to fly the airplane to the runway. And that eliminates issues with your altimeter settings, and it also eliminates issues with cold temperature. A lot of times in very cold airports, you need to use temperature compensation to compensate the altimeter for the cold air. With LPV approaches, that's not applicable. You can fly it, I don't care if it's 60 below zero, you can still fly this thing. We get a lot of testimonials from guys that have this installed in the airplane. I just had one yesterday from a friend of mine, Rich Pickett. He was flying into an island in Scotland called Islay. There's a Falcon 2000 in front of him. The only approach available to that aircraft, because he was not LPV capable, was a VOR approach, and he had to go missed, had to go someplace else to land. And Rich in his CJ3 was able to land with no issues because he was LPV equipped. Some other things that are a benefit of having this capability in your FMS is what are called multiple approach indicators, or XYZ approaches. There are multiple approaches to the same runway end that use the same type of approach. I.e., for instance, here we have an example, runway 15 GPS Zulu, runway 15 GPS Yankee. These are different types of approaches of the same type, but different minima to the same runway end. And these are all available to you if you have this programmed capability in your FMS. And Eric Carlson, you can attest to, you had a customer just a while ago that reported he wasn't able to land at an airport because he didn't have these approaches available.
Yeah, that's correct. Honestly, we get calls about this regularly, about various procedures not being in databases with some of the legacy FMSs. The AIN had an article last year about Teterboro. There was a citation customer that was trying to get into Teterboro, and ATC expected them to use the RNAV GPS-X to runway 6. In this case, with the legacy FMSs, the pilot only had the RNAV GPS-Y. The controller told the pilot that he would have to divert if he didn't have access to the RNAV-X. With the SBAS FMS, there are 9 available approaches into Teterboro, including both the RNAV-X and the RNAV-Y procedure.
You know, you'll find the same thing here in Wichita. They have these approaches to both the runway ends, 19 right and 19 left.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So another additional capability, it gives you access to smaller airports, more procedures. You can also fly GPS overlay approaches. That's nothing new, but it's a capability that's retained. Multi-sensor barrel nav, VNAV approaches, so LNAV, VNAV approaches are still available. What you're going to find here in a minute when Michael talks to the next slide, you can find out there's quite a bit of fuel savings and savings in general if the aircraft is equipped with LPV. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Michael, and let you run through this financial benefits analysis of
hey, thanks, John. And that's honestly, I mean, it's all comes down to dollars and cents. Doing these upgrades obviously costs money. So what's the benefit? And obviously, a lot of guys were talking, you know, that first poll question talked about some of the things everybody was looking for and having access to different runways, different airports, LPV approaches. And so Universal has a really nice calculator on their website, and you can see the link up there on the top left. And as you look through this, you can load in your aircraft type, what type of FMS you have. And then if you move down here a little bit, say you're going, it's got a % of WAAS airports that you can go to. So in this case scenario, we got 50% of the airports we go have WAAS. And then right below that, you can see you're doing about 300 hours a year. And you can hit the calculate button, and it's going to give you an idea of how much money and time you're going to save. And if you look over to on the right-hand side, it spits out some of the dollar figures. And if you look there, total annual savings is about $37,000. And you're going to pay all this back off in just a little over 2 years. And I think that's the big part we all really need to verify and show that you can save money with this. And obviously, so it's not just wasted money. You're saving money on flight time, getting to where you need to go quicker, but also giving you more access to airports and runways you didn't have before. And one of the other things that's super important is resale value. As these systems get older and older, getting newer equipment into the aircraft always helps resale value, and it'll actually be able to sell the aircraft faster. So there are so many reasons why to do it, just from flight ops, but also financial reasons on why it's such a benefit to install these systems. And so to go into more like why changing now, I think, Eric, I think you've got some good information on that.
Sure, Michael. So first off, with adding an SBAS FMS as well as an approved transponder, we can get to ADS-B out capability. Although the ADS-B mandate is passed here in the US, there are still mandates forthcoming throughout the world. The SBAS FMS can lead to more efficient routing, leading to shorter trip times and, as Michael discussed, lower costs. The SBAS FMS can provide LP and LPV approach capability as well as RNP 0.3 approaches. When equipped with the Unilink with the UL 800 or 801 and a compatible CVR, you can have the capability for CPDLC, DCL, FANS 1A+, as well as ATN 1B1. The navigation data, like we talked about earlier, has outgrown the legacy FMSs, which limits the number of approaches as well as regional databases instead of worldwide databases. While the SBAS FMS does have worldwide database capability. With SCN 1001, you can update the world magnetic model via navigation database, while the legacy FMSs cannot be updated in that way. Flight Assure is our maintenance coverage. It's an extended warranty program. More information is available on uasc.com. And the SBAS FMS has no parts obsolescence issues like the legacy FMS has.
All right, looks like we've got the second poll question here. Which is the most valuable benefit of the SBAS FMS to your operation? And let me jump over there. So you got the building block for future mandates and capabilities, shorter flight times, more efficient approaches with LPV, ability to leverage data communications, worldwide databases, or increased protection and flight assurance. So I think, yep, I think it is live. Oh, okay. Oh, come on, guys. Okay, there we go. Everybody can play along. Got a few more people on that. There we go. Looks like the shorter flight times is gaining the lead. There we go. We got lots of people jumping in now. So it looks like it's kind of coming down to shorter flight times, more efficient approaches with the LPV, RMP 0.3. So yeah, a few more people jumped in there. So yeah, that one definitely took the lead there, is getting those shorter flight times. Thanks for doing that. Then Eric, do you want to wrap this one up?
Sure, absolutely, Michael. So like we mentioned earlier, there are STCs available on many different airframes, many of which are listed here. We're an aircraft as small as a King Air 90 to as large as a 767. If your aircraft model's not listed, that's okay. The SBAS FMS can be installed with FAA guidance 8300.16 as well.
Thanks, Eric. Well, before we take questions, we've got to tell you a little bit about Duncan Aviation, if you didn't already know this. We've got locations across the United States, 3 major MROs in Battle Creek, Lincoln, and we just opened a facility, beautiful facility in Provo. We've got satellite stations, locations, and rapid response locations all over the U.S. And that's what Michael and I do. Duncan Aviation, we do all kinds of stuff. We take care of your aircraft from tip to tail. aircraft sales and acquisition, airframe maintenance, avionics, component repairs, engines, APUs, AOG services, engineering certification, paint and interiors, outstanding, and we also sell parts and rotables. Again, here's the contact information before we get into questions. There's Michael's email, my email, Eric's email. Feel free to contact us if you've got questions, comments, or need some help with anything, anytime. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michael, and you can run through the questions and our little raffle.
Sounds good. Yes, don't forget, we do have a raffle right at the end, and taken from the people all over. Actually, and thanks for everybody for tuning in, first of all. We've got several of you tuning in from outside of the United States, so thank you for that. Questions. John, I think you probably know these. Downtime. They've got a, say, like a UNS-1C, and they want to upgrade to WAAS. Roughly what would be a downtime?
4 to 5 days.
Okay.
That's a time of equipment. Probably could do a little bit better with a little heads up, but
okay.
Pretty easy installation.
Yeah. Okay. And then another question is, I've got a UNS-1C, and he knew last year there was some trade-ins on the UNS-1C. He was curious if those are available this year.
There are trade-in credits available, and there's also special pricing available. If you're interested, have them reach out to one of us, and we'll give them the details.
Okay, sounds good. And also, let me do this. That's it for the questions. For you, that's got, a lot of you got some other very specific questions. We can reach out to you directly on those. So we have 2 tumblers. Oh, I wish we had a picture of them. They're actually really, really nice. We're going to send one out to Quincy Bird. Thank you for tuning in. And the other one we're going to send out to Greg Ombalski. So thank you for tuning in as well. I think we have your contact information. Obviously, we have your email, so we will reach out to you there. John, do you have anything else you want to add?
Just wanted to thank everybody for their time and hope you found this worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you. And Eric, how about you? You got anything else you need to add? Did we forget anything today?
No, I think we covered everything really well. Again, if anybody has any questions from a technical aspect, I'm happy to answer. You've got my email address there on the slide. Perfect.
So we're going to wrap this up. But before I do that, feel free to go to duncanaviation.com/straight talk, where you can see future webinars and podcasts that are coming up. You'll also be able to listen to old webinars and podcasts that are out there. So feel free to tune there. Again, that's duncanaviation.com/straight talk. If you need anything from us, email John or I or Eric, and we will take care of you with it, whatever you have or any other questions. But that's all from us. Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you guys all here soon. Stay safe.